Alrighty. Hello everybody. I am back. We're doing another tea time today. Right now I have the kettle on, so it is going to be boiling up some water for the preheating that we do. My phone chooses right now to ask me to update it. Let's see. Alright, we have Daniel Ramirez. How's it going? Tyler, what's up? Hey Ken, how's it going? Hey Fox, how you doing? I'm good, I'm good. Alright, so. Hey Mark, how's it going? It's good to see you too. Yeah, so what I was going to tell you about something about today. I don't know. But anyway, if I remember it, I'll tell you. Yeah, my phone still gets updates. It's weird. It happened just now. It was like, would you like to update your phone now? I'm like, no, I'm doing a live stream. So today, I have my usual. I have the Scottish shortbread that I make at home. I have the McVitie's chocolate tea biscuits. And then I have everybody's favorite, my cucumber sandwiches. Which, yeah, I was able to get the ingredients. And so yeah, I'm excited because, you know, I don't get to have the cucumber sandwiches often anymore because the ingredients just don't last. I have to get them pretty much a day or two before I do a tea time live stream, so I have to time it all just right with the groceries I order. So, you know, because I buy groceries for, you know, my regular food for the house, so have to time it all just right. So, Granny Gaming says, what tea is it going to be this time? So today it's going to be Earl Grey. A Fox says, how's your weather? We're going through kind of a warm spell right now. It's about 95 degrees Fahrenheit outside, so I guess you could classify that as a heat wave. Have my AC on today, so that's good. I can't wait to see what my electric bill is going to be in the middle of next month. It's probably going to be really expensive because almost every day this month I've had to run my air conditioner. So that is definitely not going to be cheap, that's for sure. All right, let's see. Bedrock says, what phone is that you have? This is a Galaxy Note 10. Yeah, Galaxy Note 10. I really love this phone. You know, I've been thinking about upgrading to the Note 20, but then, like, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, why? This phone does everything I need it to do. Like, I have no reason to upgrade the phone. It would just be extra money for really no reason. So, so yeah, I'm not going to upgrade it. I'm just going to keep it as it is. Because I buy my phones renewed. Like, I don't get them from a telephone service company because it's just really expensive and it's just like the contract, and it's a lot. It's just a lot. Like, I see how much money my dad pays and stuff, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I do not want to pay that every month. So I buy mine renewed. I just buy it outright on Amazon, renewed. And my phone, it came like it was brand new to me, and 2 years later, it's still working just fine. There's no issues have developed. I know a lot of people are worried about buying like renewed phones because they're afraid their phone is gonna, like, you know, explode, like, you know, within a year or something. But that is not at all my experience. Okay, so preheating time. Gotta dump out half. That's more than half, but that's okay. Dump out half. All right. Just wait. One day I'm gonna like drop this kettle and all the boiling water is gonna land on my lap. Oh my gosh. It's just my luck. It would just happen. So, okay, so I've put them halfway with boiling water so that way the china will kind of start bringing up to temperature. We don't want to crack it with thermal shock. So, all right. Granny Gaming says, going on vacation next week and it seems like it's going to rain all week. You know, I tend to love rain, but like when my friend Chris came to visit me earlier this year, I think it was March, he was worried, like, he was like, I think it's going to rain the entire time I'm here. I'm like, yeah, but we'll still go places and stuff. And he was like, all right, you know. And we did. We went to different places. Like, we went to the Japanese garden. I filmed a whole walkthrough of the entire Portland Japanese garden. And it's on this channel, so you can just go into the channel and look that up. It's a really cool video, and if you just want to relax and enjoy, like, the sounds of rain and see this Japanese garden, like, it's a beautiful video. It's a really beautiful video. And it doesn't get that much views because everyone's here for the history video, so they look at that video and they're like, why would I want to click on that? But it's really good. But anyway, so we went to the Portland Japanese garden, and it was just raining, just pouring rain, and that's what made it so cool, you know. So I loved walk around the rain, and we were like thoroughly soaked walking through the streets of Portland. Well, at least I was. He ended up buying an umbrella, and if you're a Portlander, you can tell the difference between a Portlander and an outsider, because the Portlanders don't have umbrellas at all. They don't use them. They have rain jackets, but even then, there's some people that like walk outside like, you know, just wearing like shorts and a t-shirt, and it's pouring rain. That's just what we do, you know. And so like it's kind of funny. So he had his umbrella, and I'm just walking around. I had my rain jacket and stuff, but nevertheless, like my pants are soaked, everything. But I had so much fun. I love the rain. Daniel says, hey Alex, just found out there is another Edwardian style ship in New Zealand, and it's called TS Earnslaw, and it is a coal burner. Awesome. TS. What is TS again? Can someone tell me? Let's see. Bedrock says apparently Samsung has killed the Note series, so getting a phone with an S Pen thing is now with the S22 Ultra. Oh, okay. I love having the stylus pen because I'm always like taking pictures of something and trying to point something out, and people never see it, so I like to circle it and draw on the pictures and stuff. And you know, especially like my friend Eric, he's always asking me for like tips on like how to do his animation because he animates cartoons and stuff, and I give him like little tips and things, and I draw it out on a picture. So hey Goofy Rolls. Tyler says, what do you think of the story of the lady in white? I attached a fact or fiction to my hello. Did you send that recently? I don't think I received an email or something. Unless it was something I already responded to, but I don't remember what the last thing you and I were talking about by email. Mark says, I'm 75% through watching Queen Mary Third Class Spaces with you and Steve. Fantastic. I'm loving every second. Her smoking room and lounges were gorgeous, very classy for the time, way ahead of some older liners. Oh yeah, way ahead of some older liners. You know, like, you know, really, it's funny because some people consider Normandy, like, they're like, oh, Queen Mary doesn't hold a candle to Normandy. But when you really compare Queen Mary's accommodations to other ships of her time, she was far ahead. So really the only other competitor that Queen Mary had in terms of luxury was Normandy. So yeah, she was comparable to Normandy, you know. So it's just that some people like the really in-your-face extravagance, you know, and some people like something more subtle, like me, you know. So Wyatt says, I got the S22 Ultra last month, and it's hands down the best phone I've ever had. Oh, wow. That sounds really good. You know, like the... There's a part of me that's like, I'd love to upgrade my phone just for the sake of having a new phone, you know. But this one, there's literally nothing wrong with it. It looks like it's new out of the box, and I've had it for 2.5 years. So, like, the logical part of me is like, why would you upgrade your phone? There's nothing... There's no reason. Because it's, you know, for me, that's a lot of money. So, especially because I buy it straight up. I don't pay monthly. I just buy it straight out. I might have overfilled that, but I can't tell. There. Remove any remaining doubt. Alright. Earl Grey. 5 minutes. I'll wait for the minute on the clock. Answer a question while I'm waiting. Granny Gaming says, what do we use now to power ships? Diesel. So, most ships today use diesel engines that drive a turbo generator, and the turbo generator generates electricity, which is what powers the propellers, or the motors that drive the propellers. So diesel electric, and that's for most large vessels of any kind that we use on Earth, you know, like ships, trains, things like that. A lot of it's diesel electric. Yeah. Okay, so Daniel says turbine steamer. Mark says twin screw. Well, the twin screw thing doesn't make sense because a lot of ships were twin screw, but they were still called like SS for steamship. So like, you know, Carpathia, Oceanic 2, those were both SS ships. So TS, twin screw. Huh. What kind of carrier do you use? I use AT&T, but I do something different. Instead of doing like a contract, I pay... It's kind of weird. It's kind of like a contract, but not as expensive. I pay for all the same stuff that other people get when they pay for their contracts, but I get it at a slightly cheaper price. So for $40 a month, I get unlimited everything on my phone, and I just pay that monthly. And it's not like a contract, though. Like, you don't go in and be like, okay, here's my phone. This is how many months I'm going to pay for this phone before I get upgrades and blah, blah, blah. It's like, it's just, I bought the phone separately, and then I went in and asked to set up the, you know, the, I don't know what they call it. Yeah, because, like, I could just not pay for next month's service and everything will be fine. They'll just cut the service and, you know, there'll be no, like, fees or anything for late payments or whatever, because it's not a contract, so. And I like doing it that way because it's cheaper. Like, you know, I see, like, people pay sometimes, depending on how many phones they have and stuff like that, they might pay, you know, $100 or more per month for their phone and the service it comes with, because of course they're also paying off the phone as they use it. And so I'm like, dude, I don't want to part ways with like over $100 a month. And I was looking into it. I was going to all kinds of phone carriers and seeing what they would offer me with their contracts. I was just like, the things that they wanted to offer me, I was like, this is exorbitantly expensive for just getting phone service. So yeah, I just buy my phones renewed off Amazon, and then I just go and I put in an AT&T SIM card, and I just pay $40 a month for unlimited everything pretty much. Oh, right, Tyler. Okay. Tyler says, I was just asked about the question about the Lady in White on Queen Mary just now. Now, I've heard some things about the Lady in White, but as for, like, being able to debunk that one, I don't know, because I haven't read anything about it being one of the ghosts made up by Disney. So I haven't heard anything about that. It might have been, though, because a former crew member on the Queen Mary, someone during the hotel years, had told me that they remembered when Disney had taken over and they had started asking all the employees. They were like, oh, you know, tell us, like, what kind of weird experiences have you had? And then as they were doing that, they were like taking notes. And then he said that, like, next thing you knew, you heard these same stories, but they were overblown, and now they were being offered as tours. So it was just, like, funny. Like, people would see something out of the corner of their eye. Disney asked them, what did you see? And then they'd be like, okay, I got it. And then they go and then they put it in their tour, and it would be like this big extravagant story. Like, oh, it wasn't just something they saw in the corner of their eye. They saw it walking down the hallway, and it turned and it looked at them, and, you know, it was like, you know, it was over dramatized. And so I don't know if the Lady in White was really started off as a real thing that people were seeing, or if it was something that Disney invented, like the little girl in the pool. That was, you know, like the Jackie, she was entirely invented. She was not like part of a story that someone gave. She was 100% invented. But as for Lady in White, I don't know if she started off as one of the crew members' stories that was just kind of blown out for, you know, for money, or if she was invented. Hard to say. Evan says, can you and Steve do the powertrain next? I was thinking about that, yeah. I was thinking about talking to him about the powertrain of the Queen Mary. So, time for tea. Granny Gaming says, if you don't really need something that newer phone has, there's no reason to upgrade. Yeah, I mean, I personally don't really need it. Like, it's just that, you know, it's just that spoiled part of me that's like, I want to, you know, but I don't really need it, so. Because there's no problems with this phone whatsoever. The only reason why I got this phone 2 years ago is because my last phone was giving me so many problems. Then again, my last phone was not a brand name phone. Alrighty. Daniel says, hey Alex, is there another Queen Mary ship, but way smaller? Oh, there is another Queen Mary ship and way smaller. It's actually a turbine steamer. Yes, that is the Queen Mary in along the River Clyde. You see, the RMS Queen Mary is not the first ship to be named Queen Mary. It actually was that paddle steamer on the River Clyde, and but the ocean liner, they wanted to name it after Queen Mary. So yeah, so they talked to the owner of that steamboat and said, you know, can you name your ship Queen Mary 2, so that way we can name ours Queen Mary, because this is an ocean liner and this is, you know, this is for the Queen. And I think the man was reluctant, but you know, but they gave him a good amount of money, so he did it. He renamed his boat Queen Mary 2, and once the original Queen Mary went out of service, though, in 1967, eventually afterwards, I don't know how much longer afterwards, but the paddle boat was renamed back to Queen Mary. So today, I don't think it's still called Queen Mary 2. I think it's called just Queen Mary. But yeah, for the longest time, it was Queen Mary 2. So. Oh, I forgot to get the cream. I'm like sitting here going, where is it? Okay, hold on, everybody. It's a lot of dishes I have to wash after these tea times. I'll put this here. All right. Tyler says, if you go to the very top of the chat, you can find my fact or fiction. Yeah, but then I'll lose my place. I won't be able to read other people's things if I... I'll just do it. Yeah, I think only part of your message came through. It sounds like yeah. I think only part of your message came through. Bedrock says, how long does it take to make... Does tea to... Okay. It depends on what tea, because not all teas brew the same length, amount of time, or even temperature. They all brew at different temperatures, different times. And so, so with my Earl Grey, it takes 4 minutes to brew. I prefer to brew it for 5 minutes. I like it a little bit stronger. You know, English breakfast tea is also one of those things that brews for 4 minutes, but you can also brew it for 5. So Lady Grey, that is a tea that actually tastes best when you brew it for 3.5 minutes. And Lady Grey, you don't want it to be as brewed as hot of a temperature. So like with these teas, you know, they should be brewed around 200 degrees Fahrenheit. But with like Lady Grey, you would want to brew it at like 190 to 195. And so that's why for Lady Grey, I actually take a moment to let the water cool down a little bit before I start brewing it. So each tea is a different time, different temperature. Bedrock says, does the tea you drink use tea bags? You can get them in tea bag form, but I don't do that because tradition says to do it loose leaf. And so I use these, they're called tea infusers. So they're called tea infusers. And this one is just a little stainless steel strainer basically, and you put the tea in there, you measure it out, you put it in there, and then you start brewing it. And the reason why I measure it out and stuff is because this teapot, it requires 2.5 teaspoons of tea for, let's say, Earl Grey. The Lady Grey only takes 2 teaspoons, but the Earl Grey is 2.5 teaspoons of tea for this pot of tea. So, you also have to be careful of the quantities, and so that's why I carefully measure it all out. So, yeah. Goofy Roll says, I'm following your lead in getting the heck out of California. I'm going to move to Washington State. California has become too crazy. It really has become too crazy. I did not like living there my whole life, and the longer I lived there, the more I disliked it. I do not like the politics. I do not like how everything there works. I don't like pretty much anything about, the operation or infrastructure of California. So, as soon as we moved up here, me and my sister and my brother-in-law, we were all like, this, Oregon makes so much sense. Everything here is so much better, and we really like how things work here. And so, we adapted very quickly. So, this was just something that worked for us. And pretty much everybody I know that has moved out of California, which is a lot of people now, they are so much happier. They have adapted, There's this thing where a lot of people from other states, they're like, oh, yeah, but those Californians, they move out and they bring their politics with them. That's not true. Most of us are moving out because of the politics. Because we don't share the same views, we don't have the same ideas, we don't want to vote for the same people. So that's the thing, is like, they have this thing, they're like, well, don't bring your politics with you. It's like, I don't plan to. The craziness of California is the way it is because of just, the people and the politics there. And, if that works for them, then that works for them, but it doesn't work for me, So, yeah, Bedrock says, how many gigabytes do you have? I had 256, I think. Granny Gaming says, is the Queen Mary more luxurious than Titanic? Yes, a lot more luxurious than Titanic. And it's funny because I've heard people say that she isn't. I've heard people say, like, oh, well, Queen Mary isn't as luxurious as Titanic. But when they say luxurious, they don't literally mean luxury. They mean the way it looks. So they go, oh, Titanic looks more beautiful than Queen Mary. So they assume that equates to the luxury. But it's not. Queen Mary was way more luxurious than Titanic was. And part of that reason is because, 24 years after Titanic sank, people's tastes and, had changed. And also, the ability to provide things on ships had increased. So there was a lot of things that Queen Mary could offer that Titanic just couldn't. And so, yeah, Queen Mary is a lot more luxurious than Titanic. But the Titanic community, they're so obsessed with Titanic that they don't want to admit that. They're like, no. They look at it and they equate the look of the ship with luxury. but that's not really what luxury is necessarily. Daniel says, hey Alex, do you think that trains today suck? Because I would rather ride a steam locomotive than ride behind a diesel too. It feels like a school bus, but bigger. Yeah, I mean, I would prefer to ride, in an old-fashioned steam locomotive. I prefer, like, trains like this, wooden coaches with, these old-fashioned wooden bench seats and, and then you got a steam locomotive at the front puffing away as it, pulls the train down the tracks. That, to me, is a lot nicer. But, there are things that modern trains provide. Would I want to go across the country in an 1895 steam train? Not really, no. I mean, maybe once, but no. If I'm going to go across the country, I want to be comfortable in a train, and so I would want something modern for that reason. I would want my own, if I had the money at least, I would want my own little cabin in the train with my own bathroom and, and stuff like that. But those kinds of things you just really couldn't get on some of the older trains. Gregory says, I've seen Carpathia listed as RMS. Yeah. It was RMS. Oh, I think you're talking about because I was saying SS. Yes, so a ship can still be RMS while still being SS. So if you guys have ever seen, like, an image of Titanic's lifeboats, right, and it says SS Titanic on it, that's because SS stands for steamship. And so, but as you guys know, Titanic was RMS, a Royal Mail ship, because it had a contract with the Royal Mail to deliver to New York and to the UK. And so, even without the RMS title, those ships revert back to their original title, which is SS. So, technically, Carpathia is SS, but it was also RMS. So, I know it's kind of confusing that way. Queen Mary was the same. It was RMS, but if that title were stripped away, she would still be an SS, because she was a steamship. So, let's see. Mark says, it's popular in Australia to buy a phone outright and choose a carrier plan. I pay $200 of Australian money per year for my Telstra plan with 150 gigabyte data and unlimited calls, text. Okay. Boop says, was the Queen Mary bigger than Titanic? Absolutely. Queen Mary was 137 feet longer than Titanic. And, what was it, 20... Oh, let's see. Math time. I can't do math in my head. Let's see. 118, 92, 8, carryover. 26. 26 feet wider than Titanic in beam. And then, of course, Titanic had 9 decks. Queen Mary has 12 decks. So the Queen Mary is significantly larger. In terms of gross tonnage, she is almost twice the size of Titanic in gross tonnage. So, yeah, significantly larger ship than Titanic. That's why Queen Mary was considered a superliner. Let's see. Exterior safety deck. All right, RMS Gigantic. That sounds good. That sounds fun. Chris Butler's here. He says, the Lady in White and the Pool Girl were absolutely inventions. They came from Burbank. Yep. So, Chris Butler, I don't know if you guys know him, but yeah, he definitely knows a lot about the ship. And Yeah, if Chris Butler says that the Lady in White and Jackie were from Burbank, I believe it then. Granny says apparently tea has more caffeine than coffee. Some of it can, but not all of it. Not all of it. So some of it can, because I used to own a cafe, and we served coffee and teas there. We were like all like single origin specialty coffees and tea. And so there were some teas that had significantly less caffeine than coffee, and there were some teas that had significantly more caffeine than coffee. But it depends on what tea you drink, but not all teas are the same. Yeah. Tyler says, what is the name of the book you mentioned about Disney making up stories about Queen Mary? I would like to see if I can get it on Kindle. I don't know, unfortunately. That's what I was saying when I was mentioning it, was that I don't remember what it was. I never bought it myself because I didn't want to buy it, but I did kind of flip through it while I was on the ship. But yeah, I don't remember what it was. Boop asks, was the Queen Mary the biggest ship of its time? Technically, no. Normandy would have that title, but Queen Mary was going to be. So Normandy was announced in 1929, and that same year, Cunard had decided that they were going to start building Queen Mary 2. Well, they officially decided. Well, no, I think Normandy was announced 1928, actually, and then Queen Mary was announced 1929. So basically, once Normandy was announced, Cunard was like, okay, we're going to build a bigger ship. So they announced in 1929 that they were going to build the Queen Mary. They started construction in 1930. And, the story goes on from there. Well, before Queen Mary was launched from her construction slipway, she was going to be the largest ship in the world. But Normandy ended up adding an extra 3,000 gross tons to her size. They enclosed some areas and added, I think, some extra areas. I don't know which. But they added a little over 3,000 tons to Normandy's size. And Normandy was already at sea doing, stuff. So yeah. Queen Mary, when she was launched and when she was finally put in service, she was just under Normandy's size, so she couldn't claim that record. But she would have been. She would have been. But that just goes to show how close the two ships were in size. And, and so Queen Mary and Normandy, when they would race each other for the blue riband, it was really close, because they were both relatively the same size. But, that extra 3,500 tons that they added to Normandy ended up being, I think, the reason why Normandy just couldn't finally claim the blue ribbon from Queen Mary. Because they were already pushing Normandy already to the very end. They couldn't get any more speed out of her. And that extra 3,000 tons they added so that way they could be bigger than Queen Mary is, I think, the thing that held them back. And Queen Mary was able to capture that title because she just had raw power. Normandy was steam turbo electric. So Normandy, she used turbines to produce electricity that powered electric motors that turned her propellers. Well, Queen Mary, she was straight up steam power. So the turbines, instead of powering, turbo generators, they instead went straight into the propeller shaft. She just had raw power, and she beat Normandy a few times and ended up being the last one to claim the ribbon, and all the way up until 1952. That's why when people say, oh, well, SS United States was so much faster than Queen Mary, I'm kind of like, okay, but SS United States was significantly smaller than Queen Mary as well. I would have liked to see a ship that was comparable to the size of Queen Mary race the Queen Mary to capture that ribbon. if SS United States was the same size as Queen Mary, would she have still captured the riband? Yes, I think so. But I think it would have been more fair. You know what I'm saying? It would have been more fair. It's almost like, you know what? SS United States was comparable to the size of Titanic. So it's almost like saying, you know, like Titanic, that size, you know, it beat Queen Mary's speed. It's almost like, well, yeah, of course, any ship that's smaller than Queen Mary has an added advantage of, you know, of capturing that speed. I guess you could say the same thing between Queen Mary and Normandy, but that wasn't Queen Mary's fault. Normandy is the one that added that extra weight. So, I'm not sure I understand. Granny Gaming says, what happened when Cunard made the Queen Mary 2? I don't know what you're asking. They lived happily ever after, I guess. Russell says, if it's not broken, don't fix it. That's true. I'm trying to think what you're commenting on. Because my chat is behind everybody. I'm reading all your comments, and I'm trying to get to as many of them as possible. So therefore, when people comment, I end up getting behind because I'm reading everybody's comments. So sometimes it's difficult to know what people are commenting on because the subject was a long time ago. Bedrock says, I've always wondered, why do you use a phone for live chat? Because my computer is across the room and my computer is the one that's doing the live stream. You see, I like the live stream to have a high quality. My phone cannot deliver this quality of a live stream. You're seeing this live stream at 1080p HD. My phone can only do 720, and even then the sound would not be good. The sound would actually kind of suck. So I have my computer doing the live stream. My computer can stream at 1080. I have a separate microphone which has a much cleaner audio that's allowing me to speak to you. And then I use a webcam which, you know, has a higher quality. It's got a wider angle so you can see the poster and the train behind me. So I do all that on computer, and my computer is like 15 feet away on the other side of the room. And so I can't see your guys' comments because the comments are they're coming from the wall behind me. So I literally can't read your comments from here. I can see that there are comments, and that's how I know how far behind I am, because that one is, every time you comment, it immediately shows up there. Whereas for me here, I'm behind because I'm reading everybody's comments. So I know how far behind I am if I look over there. But yeah, so that's why I use my phone, because otherwise I won't be able to read your comments. Because right behind you guys is the pantry for my kitchen, and to the left of the pantry is my bed where I sleep. So there's no computer back there. The computer's on this side. Boop asks, is the Queen Mary 2 a cruise ship or an ocean liner? She's an ocean liner. She is most definitely an ocean liner, but she's built to be able to do cruising. So yeah, there is a significant difference, for those who don't know, between a cruise ship and an ocean liner. And it's not only just operational. It's not just what a cruise ship does versus what an ocean liner does. It's also what's the word I'm looking for? It's also in the construction. An ocean liner is constructed differently than a cruise ship. And so, yeah, Queen Mary 2 is the last remaining ocean liner in service on the oceans today, the very last one. And she is a true ocean liner that is capable of doing cruising duty very well. I gotta start eating my sandwiches. Tyler. Yeah, I read that part, but I guess I'm just not getting the joke. I guess I'm just not getting it. Alonzo says, "Hi, Alex. I have a question and/or request. I can answer your question, but requests that really depends on what you ask me. But go ahead." Let's see. Hey, the professor's here. Good morning / afternoon, Alex. I'm having my breakfast now. Awesome. Hello, professor. Hello, Anne. Sorry I'm a little late. You look snazzy today. Oh, thank you very much. I try to dress up for these tea times. You know, if you're going to do something a traditional way, you got to go all out, you know. Bedrock says, how many gigabits is your mobile data? I don't know. It's unlimited, I guess. I'm not really sure. I've never asked. Captain Happy says, Southern California is about the near perfect weather and the community you build. I grew up in Southern California. I lived there my whole life up until 2.5 years ago. I never liked the weather. That's just me. I just never liked the weather. As for the community you build, I've seen the community just get worse and worse. You know, when I was a kid, things were a little different in Southern California. But it's just gotten worse over the years, you know. It's just, yeah, Southern California was not for me, and every year I just couldn't stand it. I could stand it less and less. I wanted to be somewhere where I could be away from big cities. I mean, I live near Portland, but I don't live in Portland, and so I'm away from the big city. There's a lot of trees here. I love trees and greenery. There isn't really... Southern California to me is a big concrete jungle, and when you're away from the concrete jungle, you're in the desert. And I love deserts, but I don't like to see the deserts all the time. I prefer to see the rivers and the trees and the forests and the deer and the elk and, you know. So, yeah, this is much more better for me. Bedrock Noob says, how much mail did Titanic have when it sank? I don't know. I'm not really a Titanic expert. Daniel says, hey, Alex, do you like tamales? In my opinion, it's my favorite dish. Yes, I love tamales. My grandmother used to make tamales once every couple of months. It was so great when she did that. That was when I was a kid. And my dad has started taking up the mantle of making tamales for Christmas, which was really cool because, you know, but he never made tamales when I was younger, you know. Then again, my grandma did it. But he started doing it a couple years back, and well, now it's been several years. But it was really cool because then he would always make sure that me and my sister had like a batch of tamales. And so and he makes really good tamales, like really, really good tamales. So I love tamales. Dangerous Brian says, why do they calculate the size of a ship by tonnage instead of length, height, and width? Because when you think about it, a ship being bigger, you think of its length, height, and width, if you get what I mean. I know it seems strange because I used to think the same thing, but it actually makes more sense to calculate a ship's size by its tonnage, and the reason is because the ship could be larger by a different dimension and still not exceed the length, let's say, of another ship. So if a ship is taller, has more decks, let's say, and is a little bit wider than another ship, but isn't as long, you can't truly say the other ship is... Okay, let me just put it this way. Let's say you have one ship and it's called the Carlisle, and you have a ship called the Pedantic. I just made myself laugh. Okay, so so let's say the Pedantic is like 1,000 feet long. The Carlisle is 900 feet long. But the Carlisle has 2 more decks than the Pedantic and is wider than the Pedantic. And that ends up adding up to a lot more tonnage. Technically, the Carlisle is larger than the Pedantic, but the only thing that would keep it from being considered a smaller ship is that the Pedantic is just simply longer. That's not really a fair comparison then, because the other ship is truly larger, like in just overall size. And so that's why they measure ocean liners and other ships by their tonnage, because that's a more accurate way of measuring the size of a ship. So, yeah, that's why. The Pedantic. Sometimes I make myself laugh. Jeffrey says, the shop in the midships bar was never photographed as far as I see. Is this right? I would love to see that. The shop in the midships bar. If you're talking about Queen Mary, and you're talking about the midships bar I'm thinking of, the bar was just a countertop. There was no shop inside of it. So I don't know what you mean. The bar I'm thinking of is in the long gallery, or was in the long gallery. So is that the one you're talking about, Jeffrey? NB Oceanliner History says, hello Alex, I'd like to know the true displacement of RMS Majestic, because the answer is very online. I couldn't help you there, I don't know. Hello Lightning McQueen. Hey Shiloh, how's it going? Irish Lad says, sorry, I'm at a sleepover, so I won't be doing the whole time, but good luck. I'll be able to see you next stream. Awesome. See you next time. Hey, Chris Moody. How's it going? Hello, Brian Griffiths. SS Normandy says, will Queen Mary ever open by the next year of summer? Oh yeah, she'll open this fall. So she'll definitely be open next summer. But she's opening this fall. The Professor says, Alex, if I'm going to visit Queen Mary, I would love to meet you there. That would be cool, but Queen Mary is 1,000 miles away from me. It would be a lot of money for me to just go down there on a whim. So it really depends on how much money I have, how much time I have, and if I can arrange such a thing. Bedrock says, what kind of mobile data speed do you use? Mine is a 4G. Or is it a 5G? It's whatever my phone is capable of. I don't think my phone was capable of 5G. I don't think we used 5G 2 years ago. Malibu Company says, Alex, great work on your Haunted Mansion history videos. I watch it over and over. Thank you so much. Mark says, SoCal, hee hee. You have me saying that now. It's funny because there's so many people from abroad that they laugh when I say SoCal. Like have you guys never heard that before? SoCal is what we say in Southern California when we refer to Southern California. But I thought that was a normal thing too, because there's a lot of places in the US where they shorten things to like 2-letter increments. Like there's a place in Manhattan called Soho. I don't know what it stands for, but there's like a place called Soho and whatever, and you know, yeah, people laugh when I say SoCal. Lenny McQueen says, what would you think would happen if the Titanic hit the iceberg head on instead of avoiding it? You know, the channel Ocean Liner Designs, he recently did a video about that, about what would literally happen if the Titanic had hit the iceberg head on. It's a great video, and it's exactly what I would have... I was telling people for months what I would think about what happened to Titanic if it hit the iceberg head on. And some people, Chris, were like, no, that couldn't happen. You know, it would have just destroyed the whole thing. But yeah, so that video, you should check it out. It's on the Ocean Liner Designs channel, and it's a great video, really detailed, and really explains, you know, exactly what I've been thinking for a long time now. Jeffrey says, yes, there was a shop next to the midships bar previously, the Long Gallery. Because I have photographs of that area, and it was a long shot, so you could see the whole room, and you could see the midships bar, and I don't recall seeing a shop there. Because you could see the windows, and then the midships bar, and then the windows. And there was nothing else. There was no shops there. Unless you're talking about further starboard. I don't think of anything further starboard. So I don't know, but I've seen pictures of the Long Gallery, the whole Long Gallery, and there was no shop that I could see. And I also have blueprints too, and it doesn't show a shop. Rytopia says, hi Alex, do you take interest in the infrastructure for railways, stations and bridges, or just the trains? I'm very selective, so it's not an all-encompassing yes. It's just, if there's a train station that has a very beautiful design and it's particularly historically interesting to me, then yeah, I'll like it, you know. Like for instance, in Portland we have this train station. It's a Victorian train station, but it was it was refurbished in the 1920s. So you walk up to this Victorian train station, looks very much Victorian, and you get inside and you're stepping into the 1920s. It is the most bizarre thing you've ever seen, but it looks so cool. And I want to make a video about it someday, but I don't know. I felt so awkward walking into a train station and videoing the whole thing. I was trying to, though. But yeah, so it really just depends. You know, you might as well ask me, do I think bridges in general are cool? Sometimes, not all of them. You know, I think certain bridges are cool, like the Golden Gate Bridge, or you know, over in Bristol, England, is the I still cannot remember. It's a bridge designed by Isambard Kingdom Brunel, and it's a cool bridge. I think that's a cool bridge. So it really just depends if the particular thing in question has an interesting design and is historically significant. Frankie says Soho is south of Houston Street. Oh, Houston. Is that pronounced? That's how it's pronounced? Houston? Wow. Okay. South of Houston Street. Interesting. Malibu Company says, what do you think is about these cruise ships and the Haunted Mansion that is so captivating? Cruise ships? I don't find cruise ships captivating at all. I like ocean liners, but not cruise ships. Haunted Mansion, what do I find so captivating? It's got an amazing story about how it was designed and built. It's got lots of amazing special effects that, you know, even for the 1960s were quite just fascinating, just amazing. And then the design of the whole thing, you know, was just designed by these artists and, you know, and engineers and people who came from completely different backgrounds, who were put in, you know, that is another really interesting part about it, is the people who built the darn thing came from completely different professional backgrounds. You know, a lot of the people who designed it were originally animators, and they became Imagineers, and then, you know, the person in charge of helping to design the ride system itself, Bob Gurr, you know, he came from a auto body school and not a, you know, a ride engineering school. So it's kind of cool. You know, the person who wrote the script for Haunted Mansion, who put the story together, you know, Ex Atencio, he started off as an animator, and he ended up becoming you know, a show producer. it's just the weirdest thing, but the combination of all these unrelated people and these unrelated crafts ended up becoming one of the most amazing theme park attractions ever built. So yeah, that's what I find it so fascinating. The professor asks, what type of biscuit is the big brown one? This is called a McVitie's Digestive. So it's just a typical tea biscuit, but it's covered in chocolate. Ken says, I like to talk like a Californian just to annoy Oregonians. SS Normandy says, what do you think is the ugliest ocean liner ever built? I don't answer questions like that. I don't answer questions like, what is my least favorite ocean liner? What is the ugliest ocean liner? What is the least successful ocean liner? I don't answer questions like that because I used to, and people do not like to hear that. You know, they get so upset, they feel so personally hurt and offended when I don't agree with the ships that they like. So I don't do that anymore. Hello, Fritzy from South Carolina. Or 2PM said, did Queen Mary have a ship's cat? I've never heard of one, but I wouldn't be surprised if it did. I really wouldn't be surprised, but I've never heard of one. Ozzy says, how is the weather today, Alex? It's a hot day. It's 95 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and I'm in here with my air conditioning on. Wowzer says, the bridge you're talking about may have been the Clifton Suspension Bridge. That is it, yes, the Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol. Yeah, I always forget the name of that bridge, always. And I always talk about the bridge, too. That's the funny thing. You'd think I'd remember it, saying the name all these times, but I always forget the name. Ozzy says, your picture is frozen. I can hear you, though. It's working fine for me, so just try refreshing. Normandy says, did people bring pets on ocean liners back in the day? Oh, yes. Yeah. Most ships allowed pets on ocean liners. And, you know, ships like Titanic and even Queen Mary, they had kennels for the animals. And even today, the last remaining ocean liner in service, Queen Mary 2, she also has a kennel for the pets that people bring. So, yep, they certainly did. Hey, Ryan, how's it going? I'm doing good. Bedrock says, out of random curiosity, why is your computer so far away? Is it a desktop PC? Yes, it is a desktop PC. The amount of video editing I have to do for these videos takes up a lot of computing power. And so I have to have a very powerful PC. The reason why it's so far away is because I'm in my dining area. So my PC is in my living area. So it's kind of comparable to not having a computer in the dining room of your apartment, you know, so it's the same thing. So that's why it's so far away. And because when I do these live streams, I want to have a table in front of me so I can lay everything out, and I like to have a nice background. So I have my train running. If I did these live streams at my computer, you wouldn't be able to see my setup. It wouldn't be themed, you know, however poorly it is. And the background, all you would see is like the white wall in the back of the, you know, the image. It's just not it's not good to do the live stream from my computer. It's just not a good idea. So I have all these long cables that allow me to plug in the webcam and the microphone into it and stuff, and I'm using the computer to do the streaming. So Bedrock says they have very powerful laptops. Yes, but I was doing my research, and a laptop just wasn't what I needed. Because I do a lot of other stuff on the computer, too, that requires a lot of gaming and computing power as well. So, yeah, overall, you know, I did all my research. I needed a PC for this. And plus, I don't like laptops. So, even if I could find a laptop that did everything I needed it to do, I don't like laptops. So, I prefer PCs, you know. So, yeah, I'm very happy with my PC, and I can upgrade it very easily. I don't need to take it in anywhere to get it upgraded or anything like that whenever I need that. I can do it myself, you know, because it's a nice, huge PC. I can, you know... In fact, I built the PC myself, believe it or not. Like, I had my friends help me, my friend Jason, my friend Chris. You know, they were on a phone call with me, but I bought all the parts to my computer, all the different... everything in the computer, every single thing I bought myself, and then they walked me through it, and I put the whole computer together. And yeah, and so I'm very proud of that. I built my own computer. Let's see. Daniel says, hey Alex, did any ocean liners carry steam locomotives? I feel like you asked me that before. Yes, There were a few that did. And if I remember correctly, one of the ones that comes right to my mind is SS Rex from the Italian line. It carried a steam locomotive once on its Lido deck. They built a hard surface over the Lido deck, and then they sat a locomotive on there and transported it. So yeah, some ocean liners did transport steam locomotives, but it wasn't like a regular thing. It was like if a steam locomotive needed to be transported and there wasn't a ship large enough to do it, or there wasn't one available, they would sometimes use an ocean liner to transport something very big. You know, even the Queen Mary, when she was retired, she carried 2 double-decker London buses. I think they call them omnibuses. But yes, she carried 2 omnibuses, London omnibuses, and she carried, I think it was 4 standard English phone booths. So the red phone booths you see at the Queen Mary today, those came from London as well. She also carried her spare anchor with her, which I don't think normally the ship carried on her. I think she kept the spare anchor in Southampton, but because she was being retired, she carried the spare anchor with her. So she was carrying a lot of stuff when she came back. I think she even carried back a whole car, but that was typical because people transported their cars all the time on ocean liners. It was not at all unheard of. In fact, Queen Mary and Queen Elizabeth, they had specific spaces in the cargo holds for motor cars. So, yeah. The last R spec, thank you so much for the donation. They ask, what are your thoughts on Indian Hill railways? Indian Hill. I've never heard of that before. Let me check. Oh, I know this. I've never seen the show before. Or maybe I have. It's 3 episodes, produced by the BBC. I think I've seen this. Yeah, yeah, it's a triple documentary series, right? And it's about these various railways. Yeah, I've seen this. I think they're pretty cool. I'm not like a huge fan. Like, I mean, I don't think they're beautiful trains, but in an industrial way, they're quite amazing. And I think that the landscapes they travel through are absolutely beautiful, though. That I will say. They travel through some really beautiful landscapes. But I did enjoy watching the series. It was really cool. So, yeah. Captain Happy says, Alex, you're right, it's SoCal. I've never heard anyone but a tourist say Cali. Yeah, I've never said Cali. Only tourists say Cali, and we can't stand it. So Californians can't stand when people say Cali. It sounds so weird. It's like people who say San Fran. San Franciscans don't say San Fran. You know, they say San Francisco, you know. And if you abbreviate it, you abbreviate SF, but you never say San Fran. And so it's the same thing as with Southern California or California in general. We don't call it Cali. We call it SoCal or just California, you know. So yeah, it is weird. Tourists do say some of the funniest things. Bedrock Noob says, you built a PC? Wow. Yeah, I had to, because the things I needed it for, I had the choice. Either get a really cheap PC and buy an expensive laptop. Because the expensive laptop would have been for video editing, and then the PC would have been for some gaming and some other things that I do too, because I also do a lot of writing, I also do a lot of audio recording and stuff like that. So I use the computer for so many things. The choice is either get a somewhat cheap PC, and that's, even then it's not going to be cheap, and then get a really expensive laptop, or just build yourself a computer that works for you. And so I chose to go with that. I built a computer that does everything I need it to, because this channel takes up a lot of computing power for the things that I make for the channel. So I know, because my last computer was struggling. I would make the videos and the computer just couldn't do it. The editing software would crash all the time, because the computer would crash trying to edit the videos, and it was just too much. I needed a really powerful processor, because I had all these programs running all at the same time, so that way I can make videos, and it was just really crazy. So I just saved up the money, and I took the time and got all the things I needed for a computer that worked for me. Some of the things I do, like when I show you guys the live streams of Titanic, Honor and Glory, or I show you guys how to steam up a real steam locomotive using the Disneyland Railroad Simulator. Those two games take up a lot of graphics processing and CPU processing. Two things that, it takes up a lot. And I play those games for you guys, so that way people who don't have the computers for them can at least enjoy them. And it's related to my channel, talking about trains, talking about ocean liners. So I needed a computer that could do all these things. And so the only choice was for me to build my own. And so I did, and I've been happy with it. I've had it for over a year now, and I love it. I love this computer. Ryan says, Alex, when you're on It's a Small World, do you ever sing to it? It's a very catchy name. I don't sing when I'm on it, but if I'm washing dishes or something and all of a sudden the song pops in my head, I'll sing it. When I'm on rides, I try not to be loud and annoying. My friend and I were talking the other day about social media influencers who will go on rides and live stream, and then they'll talk or sing or whatever throughout the whole ride as they're live streaming it. And I'm just like, that's not what I would do. So, but yeah, I'm usually very respectful when I go on a ride. Cunard says, I've put all my computers together since 1990. Yeah, it's that way you get exactly what you want, Daniel says, no, I didn't ask you my question before. That was how many steam locomotives could fit in an ocean liner's boiler. Yeah, that one I remember too, but somebody did ask me if ocean liners carried steam locomotives. And I remember talking about SS Rex, and I think that was maybe 2 live streams ago. Steamer without using... Wait, what? Tiffany says, do you think the Queen Mary should be, or should have been, a steamer without oil using coal? No. Coal was a very, very volatile thing to use for ocean liners, not just because it combusted randomly, but also because, it was harder and harder for them to acquire coal, because as ocean liners got bigger and larger, they consumed more and more coal, and it just became too expensive. So yeah, oil was a lot better for ships like Queen Mary to use. It was better for the environment, and it was better for fuel efficiency, and it was safer to use overall, because the coal on an ocean liner, if you were shoveling enough coal and you picked up enough coal dust, that coal dust could ignite from the fire in the fireboxes of the boiler, the furnaces as they call them. So that's how they sometimes, got these coal fires, was sometimes the coal dust would just ignite, or sometimes, they were shoveling coal, and then a little bit of, hot coal got on the shovel as they were going back to pick up more, and that would start a coal fire. So coal was just terrible in every way. And then coal, after it was spent, you had all these ashes, and you had to dump the ashes into the ocean. and that just destroyed the environment for sure. You know, so yeah, oil is a lot better, a lot better. Brian says, do you have a favorite deck on Queen Mary? Promenade deck, yes. Most of the beautiful rooms on Queen Mary, the big, large public spaces, are all on Promenade deck. Daniel says, have you heard of the Eureka and Palisade Railway 4? Absolutely. If you're a you know, an 1890s locomotive fanatic like me, then you know, then yeah, you've definitely heard of the Eureka and Palisade. Fallon Will says, Alex, was SS Rex faster than QE2? I don't know. I don't know the speed of SS Rex. I know QE2 could do 29 knots for cruising and 30 knots at highest speed, but I don't know SS Rex. Wowzer says, have you ever heard of Brunel's Atmospheric Railway? No, I haven't. SS Normandy says, did you know in B340 they give you Ouija boards? Yes, unfortunately, I do know that. They don't give it to you, but they let you use one. So you don't get to walk away with it, but I mean, you get to use one. It's all just hokey pokey stuff to sell the whole ghost scariness thing. Fallon Will says, what is the deepest ship that sank in the ocean? Oh, I couldn't tell you. It could have been a sailing ship from, you know, 10 centuries ago. I don't know. 10 centuries? No. But like 8 centuries ago. But I wouldn't know. I couldn't tell you. Bedrock says, what specs on the computer? You know, off the top of my head, I don't remember. You know, numbers are a really difficult thing for me to remember. So, and computer specs are all about numbers. I don't remember. It's pretty powerful, that's for sure. I made sure it was when I had bought all the stuff for it. You know, like, I can't remember any of the numbers off the top of my head. But it's way more powerful than what most people would ever buy. Most people, I say. There are people who have way more powerful computers than me. My friend has a way more powerful computer than me, but mine is more powerful than your average desktop PC. That is for sure. It's a really, really crazy powerful computer. Justin says, can you rattle off various nicknames of the Queen Mary and the Queen Mary had over the years, and what, if any, of your favorite term or nickname for her? Well, Queen Mary had a few. She was the Mary, the Rolling Mary, Queen of the Sea, some people called her Her Majesty, but that was not a very common nickname. But you know, they would refer to the Queen Mary as Her Majesty, but it was really more of a joke, because if you did say Her Majesty, Her Majesty Queen Mary, people might mistake for thinking, the actual, former queen. So. But what is my favorite? My favorite is the Mary. I like the nickname the Rolling Mary, but the thing is that nickname is really only relevant when you're discussing her rolling. So, you know, it's you don't just like randomly tell people like, oh, you know, let's go drive down to the Rolling Mary today. Like, you don't say that, you know, like. But if I were to tell my friend like, oh, let's go to the Mary, then yeah. So the Mary is my favorite nickname for Queen Mary. Oh yeah, she was also called the Grey Ghost. That's right. The Grey Ghost. Now, the funny thing about the Grey Ghost is that a lot of ships were actually called the Grey Ghost. But not a lot of people know that. So, for instance, the SS America, which served in World War II, became the SS... Or no, became the USS West Point. But it was also known as the Grey Ghost. So there were quite a few ships that were referred to as the Grey Ghost during World War II. And the Queen Mary was just one of them. So I didn't mean to burst everyone's bubble that way, because I know a lot of people think that the Queen Mary was like the only ship to be referred to as the Grey Ghost. But it did burst my bubble when I learned about it. But as someone who tries to be as accurate as possible, I have to burst that bubble. But yeah, so that's why I don't really consider the Grey Ghost that cool anymore, is just because she wasn't the only ship during that time to be called the Grey Ghost. Granny Gaming says, what is a promenade deck? So a promenade deck on an ocean liner, because they don't really have them on cruise ships, but on an ocean liner, the promenade deck is usually a deck that has wooden floorboards, right? Sometimes teak, sometimes other things like pine. And the promenade deck usually wraps around the superstructure of the ship, providing a way for passengers to get their exercise, either by walking or by doing some light jogging, depending on the ship. Titanic, you wouldn't have seen people jog on the promenade. They would have done walking. But yeah, so that's what a promenade is. And promenade decks, they tended to also have the public spaces of the ship on that deck. So most of the public spaces on an ocean liner tended to be on the promenade deck as well. It was just an overall recreational deck for passengers. And so that's just generally speaking, because it wasn't always that way for every ship, but most ships, yeah. So that's what a promenade deck is. And then usually above a promenade, usually right above a promenade, would be what was called the boat deck. Or on the Queen Mary's, on the Queen Mary, it wasn't the boat deck; it was the sun deck, because technically Queen Mary didn't have a boat deck. The boats were a deck above the sun deck. So, but some people still call her sun deck a boat deck, because that's just traditionally what you called the deck above the promenade. So Titanic had a boat deck, but yeah, promenade is like the main thoroughfare on most ocean liners. And it is on Queen Mary 2 as well. Queen Mary 2, she has a promenade. I don't think they call it the promenade, though. I mean, they call the wraparound part the promenade, but they don't call the whole deck the promenade, not to my knowledge. I might be wrong, though. Nunya Biz says, thanks for introducing us to the train game, watching for more unique content. Thank you so much. Kevin says, SS Rex had a max speed of 28 knots. Oh, then, okay, then yeah, then definitely Queen Elizabeth was, QE2, Queen Elizabeth 2 was faster, for sure. Ryan Hines says, Alex, what is the biggest ship in the world? I sort of forgot. Well, the biggest passenger ship in the world is Oasis of the Seas. It's the largest passenger ship in the world. But the largest ocean liner ever built is Cunard's Queen Mary 2. That's the largest ocean liner ever built. And before the Queen Mary 2, the largest ocean liner before that was technically the Queen Elizabeth. The original Queen Elizabeth was the largest ocean liner prior to Queen Mary 2. Yeah. Let me think. Yeah. Fallon Will says, Alex, if the Titanic put its anchors down, would it have still sank? Absolutely, considering that, she was she was floating in 2 miles of ocean. Her anchors wouldn't have reached the bottom. They, you see, her anchors, the chains are linked to the ship, and so if she were to drop anchor, both of them, or even all three, they would go down and they'd run full out, and then they'd come to a stop because there would still be well over a mile of ocean beneath the anchors once they were run full out. So it wouldn't have made a difference. And even if she was sinking in shallow water where the anchors actually hit the ground, it still wouldn't have made a difference because the anchors are not so heavy. Like, you wouldn't, if she dropped her anchors, you wouldn't see the ship suddenly go whoop like that. Like, the ship wouldn't suddenly become super buoyant. The anchors were like nothing compared to the weight of Titanic. Titanic weighed so much more than the anchors combined. So, yeah, it wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever. Normandy says, I wish they could promote the Queen Mary as a place to go back in time and experience how it was back in the day and not all about ghosts. Yeah, I wish that too. They could make so much money by going with that approach. They've done it a few times with special events, and I know people are always like, "Oh, but Alex, they've done it before. They've sold the Queen Mary as a historic experience." I'm like, "Yeah, but they did it for special events. They didn't keep up with it." So, like they did for a while try during Disney's years. They hired all these actors to walk around the ship to act like famous actors. And so it was almost like you could walk around the ship and you'd see like Marilyn Monroe or something. And, or even like Bob Hope or whatever. But that was just weird. Like, I know it sounds on paper like that would be a good idea, but in reality, that wouldn't be a very good idea, So, and it wasn't. In the end of the day, it was not a good idea. And they spent so much money on walk-around actors, just walk around the ship, and all for nothing. People, like, most of the time, they'd walk up to them and be like, they had no idea who that was, So, but yeah, if they went 100% heavily towards the idea of selling the Queen Mary as a trip back in time and literally ran the ship with the amenities she would have used at sea, it would be very different. I mean, people think today are like, oh, well, it's not that much different. No, it really is. The things that they offer today are almost nothing like they would have offered back then. And the rooms that they would have used back then are not being used today for those same reasons. So if they did do that, if they did use those big beautiful public spaces for the purposes they were designed for, albeit with one or two changes, because, like, for instance, you don't want people smoking on the Queen Mary anymore, so, you wouldn't use the smoking rooms for that purpose, but you could reuse them for different purposes. The thing is that the people that have traditionally ran the ship all these years, they haven't had that imagination. Not even Disney had that imagination for the Queen Mary. And I think that's not really because Disney doesn't know what they were doing. It's because they had all of Disney's best people working on theme parks, like, Disneyland Paris, and, and they were working on other ideas and stuff. They were too busy to think about the Queen Mary. And so the Queen Mary didn't even get their best ideas. She got, like, some of the lesser ideas. And those lesser ideas did not pan out. Granny Gaming says, what kind of editing software do you use? I use Adobe Premiere Pro. Granny Gaming says, how did pumps work on ocean liners? Same as anywhere else, really. They're just large pumps, and, you know, you could turn them on manually, or they could use floaters that sensed water in the ship, and they would start pumping the water out. And when the floaters came back down, they would turn off. So, you know, they're just pumps, really. Martupia says, have you heard of Mallard and the A4s? No. Is that a band? Ryan Hines says, have you ever been to a zoo before, Alex? Oh, yes, many times. Fallon Will says, Alex, there's a Britannic game on PC. Yeah, I know, but I don't want to play it. Lightning McQueen says, can you tell me a funny joke? No. I don't tell very good jokes. Fallon Will says, Alex, is the Titanic never broke conspiracy true or false? That's false. Titanic did break. There's photo evidence of the ship torn in half. Tiffany says, can you please answer this question or riddle? How long would the Titanic sink? How long would the Titanic sink if 6 boiler rooms were punctured? I don't know. I'm not an engineer, and frankly, I don't know that much about Titanic to begin with. I know that my channel has a lot of ocean liners on it, but the one topic I always stay away from is Titanic topic. And you'll probably see why. There might be a few people who are going to watch this who are Titanic major fans, and they will just start going off on their different ideas. So I don't discuss Titanic. Justin says, the Mary Mary as a nickname. What do you think? Oh, that's funny. Justin says, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but why wasn't the Queen Elizabeth faster than the Queen Mary? I know I've heard the answer before, but can't remember. Elizabeth certainly had a sleeker bow. Yes, actually, I do have a video about that, actually. The video is on my channel. It's called, Was Queen Elizabeth Secretly Faster? So I would look that up. It's a really good video. I spoke to, to the maritime historian, Bill Sauter. I asked him because he went and asked the previous captains of both ships. He asked them, was the Queen Elizabeth actually faster than the Queen Mary? And I think you'll really love that video. I don't want to spoil it for you because it's an entertaining video as well. So yeah, it's called Was Queen Elizabeth Secretly Faster? And it's on my channel, and it's got the thumbnail is a picture of the Queen Elizabeth. So yeah, enjoy that one. Armando says, could you still stay at the Queen Mary, or is it just for show? So the Queen Mary closed in 2020 for the pandemic, and she has never reopened since because they are doing repairs. She was in very bad condition when the last operators had gone bankrupt. So the city is putting in repairs to get the ship reopened this fall. Now, up until the ship closed for the pandemic, she was allowing people to stay in the hotel rooms. And the city of Long Beach has expressed that when the ship reopens, they hope to have the hotel portion of the ship reopened as well, so people can continue booking rooms and staying on the ship. There's a possibility, though, that when the ship reopens this fall, that the hotel rooms may not be available for booking until the beginning of next year. But who knows? There might be a possibility they might have both parts of the ship open. But yes, technically, Queen Mary is one of those ships that you could stay on it overnight. And a lot of people have said it's a really cool experience. It, really helps give you the sense of transporting back in time. So yeah. I would love to stay on the Queen Mary. I've never personally stayed aboard the Queen Mary in a room, but I would love to. Granny Gaming says photo evidence, like underwater photo. Yeah, there's tons of underwater photos of the ship completely ripped in half. Tons of it. And you can even see, one of my favorite photos they took of Titanic. This is Titanic, folks. I'm not talking about Queen Mary anymore. But one of my favorite photos they took of Titanic's wreck is actually looking down at the main engines, because the ship was torn in half, pretty much right there at the main engines, and you can see them just sticking out in the water. So that's my favorite Titanic wreck photo, is of the main engines. So yeah, there's tons of photo proof that the Titanic did split in half. Jeffrey says, any update on when Queen Mary is reopening? Oh, there was. So, the city had told QMI Restore the Queen that they were aiming for October 1st. But they recently told QMI Restore the Queen that there were some delays. So, October 1st may not be the reopening day. It may still be in November. It may still be November 1st, or maybe even the end of November at the latest. But they have not put down a solid reopening day yet. Watch them do it right after the live stream. That always happens to me whenever I report news information. I report it to you guys, and then hours later they report a whole different thing. But anyway, so there's been no solid date set for the reopening of the Queen Mary, but they have been aiming for October 1st. So it's going to be a really close call. Fallon Will says, Alex, how did SS Rex sink? She was bombed by the Allies. Justin says, but then Disney had the nerve to build their own ship of sorts in the likeness of the Queen Mary elsewhere. Where was this with the original Queen Mary? I know you've answered, so I just had to say it. Where was this? Are you asking where the ship that Disney built is? It's at Tokyo Disney Sea, which is a theme park over there. And the ship there is the SS Columbia, and it was designed to look very much like the RMS Queen Mary, and that was a nod by the Imagineers, because the Tokyo Disney Sea was a concept created from the Port Disney idea, or the Disney Sea idea, Disney Sea idea that they had for the Queen Mary, the original. So, yeah. Mark says, I know what you mean, Titanic. A friend of a friend joined me for coffee and to talk ocean liners. Sadly, the lady only knew the name Titanic. She had never heard of Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth. Didn't have much to say. SS Normandy said people were getting scared of the ship getting scrapped when the bankruptcy happened for the Queen Mary. Yeah, that's true. When the bankruptcy happened, a lot of people were worried that Queen Mary would get scrapped. I knew she wouldn't, but I was afraid of... Okay, so here's the thing. I knew that nobody was going to scrap the Queen Mary because she earns too much money for the city to just let her go. The press was printing all this stuff. It wasn't necessarily fake news, but they were wording it in a way that gave people the wrong impression about the ship. Not just construction-wise, but how much money the ship earned. They were telling people, oh, the Queen Mary doesn't earn enough money to pay for its maintenance. And it's kind of like, that's a really misleading thing to say, considering that her maintenance is paid for by the other things that happen on the property, such as the cruise terminal. There are port fees that go from the cruise terminal directly to the Queen Mary. That pays Queen Mary's maintenance. And the company was not using that money to the best of their ability. Let's just put it that way. Not Carnival, but the company operating the ship was not using that money to the best of their ability. So the Queen Mary did make a profit. She did. She made an $11 million profit every year. But the newspapers were taking the worst information and weaving it in a way that sold their newspapers. And that's the thing I really couldn't stand. I couldn't stand reading that. And so people were walking away going, look what this says. This says the Queen Mary's about to capsize and she doesn't earn enough money to pay for her maintenance. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, these newspapers are making people think all the wrong things about the ship. They're not even bothering to put out the absolute correct information. I've read the reports myself, the surveys and the inspection reports of the ship. Yeah, there are lots of things here and there that are need to be fixed for sure. But the way that the newspapers made it sound like was like the ship was going to sink any moment, which was not true at all. The ship is 100% watertight and sound. There are corroded areas, but it's not like the ship is going to collapse in on itself. People were starting to think that. They were starting to think that literally the ship was rotten and it was going to just, either sink or collapse in on itself. And it was such a false narrative. And that's what got me so upset. And then with the people saying that the ship didn't earn enough money for maintenance. So it was just like, so yeah, there was this big scare in the ocean liner community that the Queen Mary might get scrapped, and I never once believed it because I've read all the reports. I knew how much money the ship made for the city of Long Beach and the county of LA. She earned the county of LA $205 million a year in tourism revenue, both directly and indirectly. And so it was like, if you just scrap the ship, well, goodbye $205 million per year, and hello, one time full payment, $190 million to scrap the ship. No, if you had a classic car and it was sitting in your driveway and, people were giving you, $200 a year just to see the thing, and there was a question of scrapping the car and it would have cost you $190 to scrap it, and you'd never see that $190 again, nor would you see the $200 a year again, you'd be like, oh, well, I'm not going to scrap the car then, because why would I pay $190 million to scrap it and then say goodbye to $200 a year? So, you know what I'm saying? So it's the same thing with the Queen Mary. It made no sense. It made no financial sense. It would have been financially irresponsible to scrap the ship. But the newspapers, they take the truth, so it's not a lie. They take the truth and they weave it in this weird word jumble that makes it sound much worse than it is, because that's what sells the papers. People want to read tragedy. And I was so upset when I would read that. I was so upset. Let's see. Fallon Wills says, where is the RMS, our SS Hercules? A ship? RMS or SS? I'm gonna think that is Hercules. Oh, Hercules. Oh, no, that's not RMS or SS. That's H4 Hercules, which is an airplane, not a ship. I didn't want to reveal too much, but I do have a video coming out, not of the Hercules, this Friday, and then I was planning on working on the Hercules video right afterwards. So I was planning on diving straight into the Hercules video right after that. But I didn't want to say anything because every time I promise I'm going to get a certain video out, something happens. And then I have to choose a different video. The last time I tried to do my Hercules video, some major famous YouTuber put out a video all about it. And I was like, great, now I have to wait to put out mine because everybody's going to be spent. You know, they're not going to want to see another video about the Hercules. But this time I have the opportunity to do that. And so I was going to put my video out this Friday and then start working on the Hercules video next. Justin says, I will absolutely watch and share the video that you will make whenever you do stay on the Queen Mary. Whenever you do stay on the Queen Mary. Oh, yeah. Just so you know, liner historians should queue up for her. Oh, I think so. I think a lot of ocean liner historians are going to queue up to see the Queen Mary again. You know, it's just like... I learned from my last trip to Queen Mary not to take the Queen Mary for granted. You know, you never know how long she'll be here, considering the fact that so much almost happened last time. Fallon asks, Alex, why are the boilers and engines not on Queen Mary? Because they were originally... Well, there are 2 engines. She had 4 engines. 2 of them are still on the ship. But the rest of the boilers and the other 2 engines and the turbo generators, they were all removed because they were going to build a museum down there. It was going to be a Jacques Cousteau museum. He did eventually build and open a museum, but it was significantly smaller than they originally planned. They were going to build this massive museum of the sea that would have taken up all of the boiler turbo generator rooms and the forward engine room. And so they removed all of that to do that. There's this big misconception that Cunard asked the city to remove those, but that wasn't true. Cunard didn't care whether they kept the boilers and engines on the ship. It was the Cousteau Museum that they were gonna build there that said, remove all this because we need all this space for our museum. So they removed all of it, and then during that time, the museum, they kept having to cut back on their budget, and eventually they opened a museum that was significantly smaller, like a quarter the size of what they originally planned. And so now the ship is without all those boilers and engines and stuff. She has 2 engines left, and the 2 engines... It was funny because there was a talk about preserving the boilers and engines before they ripped them out. They thought, well, what if we keep them? But the general consensus at the time was, who's going to want to see this ugly stuff? That was literally the general consensus. People didn't think about museum ships the way we do today. Back then they thought if a ship is being preserved, it's for something else. It's not as a museum, it's for something else. So Queen Mary, she wasn't intended to be preserved as a full-on museum. She was going to serve multiple duties. And so they thought, you know, of all the beautiful spaces on this ship, no one is going to want to see the engine rooms. And it turned out that the museum that they built, the Cousteau Museum, it flopped. It was not a financial success. And it turned out that right next door, the exhibit with the 2 last remaining engines turned out to be the most popular exhibit on the ship because everybody wanted to see the engines of the Queen Mary. They wanted to know, after these 31 years at sea, they wanted to see the engines that made her famous. So it's hilarious, you know. They realized after they opened the Cousteau Museum, you know, oh crap, we removed the stuff that people actually wanted to see. So, yeah, they made a lot of mistakes. Justin says, has there been any serious lobbying on behalf of the Queen Mary in Washington? I know I keep mentioning this notion, but I'm hoping the city and the state of California can do it. There's been some lobbying, but not much. There's an organization in the UK. They're located in Scotland, and they're all about the Clyde ships. They're all about the Clyde ships, and they sent a letter, probably like an email, really, but they sent a letter to President Biden asking him to intervene to help save and restore the ship. And Biden has a relationship of some kind with the Long Beach mayor, Mayor Garcia. They kind of know each other a little bit, kind of like buddies, kind of. So maybe Biden said something to him. I doubt it, though. I doubt that Biden really cares about the Queen Mary. I don't know that he really knows what the ship is. Most people don't. You know, honestly, you ask most... this is the sad part, you guys. Get ready, get your napkins and your tissues out. This is the sad part. Most Americans have no idea why the Queen Mary is significant. I can't tell you how many people comment on my channel, just scrap her. She's a useless ship anyway. No one cares. And I even get Americans saying, she means nothing to America. Why don't we preserve the SS United States? She actually did something for this country. And it's astounding. It's astounding because the Queen Mary was a British-built ship, yes. But she has done more for this country than most other passenger ships in our history, our American history. She's done so much for this country. She is a war hero to this country. That is why this country wanted so badly to acquire the Queen Mary when she retired. You know, and unfortunately, this part of the story is not told often enough. All people know about her was she was some fancy ship that is now haunted and sits completely in disrepair in Long Beach. That's the most of what Americans know. And it's just sad. It's just completely sad. So I doubt that Biden would have done anything because he probably would have been like, Queen Mary, is that some floating hotel somewhere? Like, you know, he wouldn't have known anything. And Mayor Garcia, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't really know. Mayor Garcia says he loves the Queen Mary. He's a big fan of the Queen Mary. But on topics about the Queen Mary, you don't really see him around too much. You know, so it's kind of like, well, you know, it's really sad. There's, you know, and then there's a movie coming out about the Queen Mary. It's called The Queen Mary. And it's actually a horror movie. They're taking all the most famous stories of Queen Mary's ghosts and they're weaving it into a movie. And it's unfortunate because all it's going to do is it's going to perpetuate the ghostliness of the Queen Mary. But it's not going to teach anybody anything about the ship. It's not going to show American people how important the ship was. I have both American veterans and the children of American veterans who have both emailed me and commented on my channel saying how much the ship meant to them and their family members who sailed aboard the Queen Mary on their way to war and on their way back from war. Recently, there was someone who mentioned that, I hope I'm getting their story correctly, that their grandfather or their father was temporarily a prisoner of war. I don't remember where. I just recently got this. Maybe it's actually, I think I took a screenshot of it. I can give you a more accurate retelling. Let me see. I'm not going to say the person's name. My father was a Far East prisoner of war. After years of being used for slave labor, V-Day finally arrived. It was upon the Queen Mary that he and his comrades sailed home to their families. This ship will always have a place in my heart. So when Americans tell me that Queen Mary doesn't matter, that upsets me a lot. Because they don't know. They have no idea. You know? And then there's people that are like, oh, well, you know, Olympic is so much better than Queen Mary. And it's just like, why are we comparing ships? We shouldn't be comparing ships. Olympic did an amazing job for the war, you know, but so did Queen Mary, you know. I mean, one of the most significant things Queen Mary did was she directly helped win a battle. She helped win the first battle at El Alamein, because right as the British Eighth Army was trapped against the shores of El Alamein, they were cornered by the Erwin Rommel's Africa Corps, the Axis forces. They came in and they were cornered, and then right as all hope was lost, here comes the Queen Mary, saddled with 10,000 American troops. American troops came in. They were taken off the ship and immediately hauled onto the shores of El Alamein, where they overwhelmed Rommel's forces, pushed back against them, and won the battle because of RMS Queen Mary. It's just like, and there's tons of like little stories like that, things that just are so significant to our American history that Americans just don't know, It's sad. It's sad. Let's see. SS Normandy says, at first I didn't want to go to Queen Mary because of the creepy ghost stories, but thanks to you, I want to go see it. You'll like it a lot. I've been to the Queen Mary many times in my life. I've never seen a ghost on the Queen Mary. I've never felt at all creeped out. It's always felt like this really happy, lovely place to be. Some people I know say they've seen ghosts, but that has never pushed them away from being there. So even they still go and still love the ship so much. But I've never felt at all uneasy on the board the Queen Mary. It felt like such a warm place, a place that was loved in the past, at least. So it feels great. Arrow Wenser says, have you seen the Cunard ship Queen Anne? Yes, I have. I'm not really a fan of cruise ships. Hello, Sequad. Doc says, hey Alex, not sure if you saw my comment or your recent vid, but have you ever pursued narrating audiobooks and documentaries professionally, or do you already do this for a living? You're so talented. Thank you so much. I have looked into it, but the thing is it's a really lucrative business. It's, it's very competitive as well. So basically the people that dominate the audiobooks, documentaries, narration, all that kind of stuff, voiceovers, it's becoming more and more famous actors. It used to be that if you just had a really good voice, you were selected. But nowadays, people want more and more famous actors to do this stuff. So that's why you get more and more audiobooks that are being narrated by famous actors. And also, the other thing, too, is I have no real experience in that area. So I actually am not a good candidate for that. It would be interesting. I would try it out to see if it worked, but there's no one approaching me for that, and then the last thing is I'd have to be able to get to where they are to do the recording, and I live far away. Like most of the audio recording on this side of the US is done in LA. I live 1,000 miles away from LA. It would not be easy for me to just suddenly hop on a plane and go down there, to record something, So it's very difficult, very, very difficult. But if I was given an offer, I would definitely look into it and try it out, Mark says, lack of historical education is a sad thing, Alex. Be thankful we know what we know and that Queen Mary is still with us to this day. Yes, exactly. Mark says, Queen Mary is literally home to me. When I travel to America, I feel I have returned home. Yep. I feel the same way. Nunya Biz says, guess you gotta keep educating folks about Queen Mary and other stuff, Alex. Your work will never end. Lucky us. Lucky me, too. I love talking about the Queen Mary, so, if my work is never done, then that's probably a good thing. Jeffrey says, your last Disney video got a lot of views. Will you be doing more now? I'm not gonna say, more as in more frequently. There's still other videos I want to make that are Disney-themed, but I'm not gonna be doing them more frequently. That video was popular because it was for Disneyland's anniversary, and it was about the story of the creation of Disneyland. It wasn't popular because people come to my channel to see that stuff. I've been doing the Disney videos for 4 years before I stopped, and you know, the views were going down and down and down and down and down and down and down to the point where I had almost no views at all for my videos. So I know for a fact if I put out another Disney video and it has nothing to do with an anniversary of a ride or something, and it's just a random video about a random ride about Disney, it won't get that many views. So it was nice to see that my Disneyland history video had gotten, you know, it's 75,000 just about, which is pretty good. I've never gotten that amount before for a Disney video, 75,000. That's pretty good, but it was a one-off thing. It's not going to happen again if I post another video. The next video I can only expect maybe 3,000 views. So that, and even then, my Disneyland video almost wasn't a success because I had spent over a month working on that video and it got very little views. So it was a lot of work, but thankfully it eventually did pay off. But it's not going to be a repeat success with every Disney video. Kit says, would you prefer the SS Deutschland or Kaiser Wilhelm der Grosse? You know, I don't know anything about the SS Deutschland, so I couldn't give you a good answer for that. Justin says, whenever someone is confused about the Queen Mary or Queen Elizabeth, I always tell them somewhat sarcastically that they only helped save the world as we know it on a massive world war, in a massive world war. Yeah, exactly, right? You know, like, oh yeah, they only helped save the world, that's all, you know. Which is totally true. You know, when you have the prime minister of a major, you know, nation saying that these two ships helped shorten the war by a year, like, that is a major, you know, thing for an ocean liner. That's pretty cool. Doc. Oh, you're a psychologist. Oh, awesome. It's funny because there was a time in my life where I was very interested in psychology. I do love learning about the way that people think. I never pursued it because I guess I didn't love it enough, but I do have some affinity for psychology. And thank you. Justin says, you, me, and everybody on this chat, as well as our neighbors, can thank the Queen Mary among many other ships for making our lives possible today. If that is not an incentive, I don't know what is. Mm-hmm. Mirabelle says, did Germans torpedo the Britannic, Lusitania, and Carpathia? That's a very specific question, so I imagine that you have already heard that they did. But I will confirm that yes, Lusitania was torpedoed. I think Carpathia was torpedoed, but Britannic hit a mine. Britannic hit a mine, but it was laid by the Germans, that's for sure. C Quad says, I believe the SS United States was supposed to be in the war, I think, but it never got done in time. I don't think so, because the SS United States, you know, it was introduced 5 years after the war ended. So, and usually it takes about 5 years to build a ship, so I don't think they ever thought that it would be ready for the war, you know. Daniel says, hey Alex, I know you're a fan of smaller 1800s era trains, but what is a big steam locomotive from the 1900s that you at least like? I guess it would be the biggest one. The Big Boy, created by the Union Pacific. I don't think it's a beautiful engine by any means. When I look at like the older steam engines, when I see them, to me they're beautiful. They are just these beautiful pieces of machinery. When I look at the Union Pacific Big Boy, I don't see beauty. I just see this like big industrial machine, but it's cool for that reason. So I like it because it's cool, but I don't think it's at all beautiful, and it's not meant to look beautiful, to be honest. It's meant to just be a workhorse for the railroad. But if there was one from the 1900s that I actually like, it would be the Big Boy or the Challenger. The Challenger's another one. But that's pretty much it. I really don't like engines from after the 1900s, you know, like, I don't know why. They don't look pretty to me. That's where they went from. That's where, you know, engines went from being these beautiful things to show off, these beautiful pieces of machinery to show off to the public, into being something that was purely industrial. That, you know, it didn't matter if the public thought the engine looked nice, really, you know. I mean, there was a brief time during the Art Deco era where they did think that maybe they should decorate the trains better. And they did try. They made these streamlined-looking steam engines, but that was the extent of it. And I don't really like the way streamlined steam engines look. Justin says, Britannic hit a mine, Carpathia and Lusitania were sunk by torpedoes, one each. Okay, yeah. So I thought I had that right. Hello, A-Fox. Yeah, you're back, but I have to go now. I've actually been on this live stream longer than I was hoping. I thought I would be done an hour ago, because I do have to get dinner going, and then I have to finish making the video that's coming out this Friday. So, yeah. And you guys might have noticed I had Mr. Squeaky running in the background, which, as you know, I fixed the squeaking last time. But when I started up the train today, it started squeaking again. Weird. I was like, that's weird. I oiled the train last time, and I thought that would be the end of it. But when I started running it today, it was squeaking really badly. So I oiled it again. It hasn't made a single sound since. If next time I do the tea time and I start it up and it starts squeaking, I think I'll know what's wrong with it, which is that the oil, I think, had actually, since it was sitting, because the train was sitting for a few days because I didn't use it, you know, I think maybe the oil, after not being used, was actually just slowly dripping down off of the axles and onto the track. That happens on real trains, too. When a real train is not in use, the oils will eventually start settling, and they'll kind of drip down and off of the engine. So I think that's what happened, but I will be able to confirm that if it happens again. So, because it was weird. Like, I thought I oiled it. Why is it squeaking again? So, I think that's what happened. Yeah, Mark says... Wait. C-Quad says, I collect baseball cards from the 1950s. Pretty cool. I'm not much into sports myself, though. Justin says, I'm here for Queen Mary discussions as well, once again, because that's the main idea here. That and scones, of course. Yeah. Mark says, the design of SS United States was inspired by World War II in the event of a third war where troop carrying capacity, speed, and rapid conversion to troop may be needed. Thankfully, that never happened. Yeah. Malibu Company. I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. The ghost activity on the Queen Mary had to do with the uncertainty regarding the ship. A deal was pending with Rutherford Properties. As an Imagineer, a group of us went to look at what was going on. It was so extreme it came to our attention and made it into the boardroom of a Dow Jones company. When the sale to Disney was finalized and the Queen Mary was confirmed to stay, all settled down. I'm not sure what that means. When the sale to Disney was finalized and the Queen Mary was confirmed to stay, all settled down. Are you saying that the ghost activity settled down because Disney was confirmed to operate the lease of the ship? I feel like I'm misunderstanding that. Daniel says, hey Alex, do your trains sometimes wheel slip? Not generally, no. They only did that once because sometimes when I shuffle the trains around, I need the big engine to move both trains at the exact same time. So I'll hook up all the cars together, and that's a lot of weight. And so that has resulted in a wheel slip, but not much. This engine is a lot heavier than it looks, and so it's actually really, really good at pulling. So, but generally speaking, no wheel slip. Even before I invested in all this, I did something really cool. And I even talked about it in my video about this. I talked about it there. That I actually bought 2 cars, filled them with quarters, like American quarters, to weigh it down. And I measured out the quarters so I knew what the weight was. I wanted to see exactly how much the engine could pull before it had a wheel slip. And it was some ridiculous, like it was like something like it had to pull like 2 pounds or something before it even started to show signs of a wheel slip. And so it's a very strong engine. Malibu Company says the spirits were fearing that the ship would be scrapped. When they saw that was not the case, the spirit activity settled down. Disney thought about scrapping the Queen Mary. What I want to know, Malibu Company, because there was a person, I don't think they were an Imagineer, but they could have been. They were one of the people that helped write the stories of the ghost activity on the Queen Mary. And they were interviewed by this author who created a book that was being sold on the Queen Mary even before the ship closed for the pandemic. And the person was talking about how they literally invented the stories of the characters like Jackie from the first class swimming pool and you know, other characters, and room B340 and all that was completely, I mean, everybody knows B340 is made up. Like, there's nothing about it that's at all real. And it was completely Imagineered into, you know, being this haunted room aspect, you know. So, and I even know some of the special effects they used in that room, and some of them still probably exist to this day. There was a famous special effect where the faucet in the bathroom would turn on its own. I don't know whether it was triggered by an employee doing it, you know, or if it was designed to randomly start opening on its own. I'm not sure. But yeah, and so special effects like that have remained because even today, people, their number one thing is talking about how the faucet turns on. And because it's such a consistent story, I was skeptical of it. And that's when I learned that there's probably still a motor that turns on the faucet in the bathroom to scare the people staying in the board room. But yeah, that's what I really want to know about, because I know that Disney did invent some of those stories. Because, you know, for instance, Jackie, there is no record in Cunard that a little girl drowned in the pool. Children were not even allowed near the pools when the ship was in service. There's no way a child could have drowned in there. And, you know, even then, Jackie haunts the first class pool, but supposedly Jackie actually drowned in the second class pool. So it's just a lot of like hokiness and stuff. So I'm actually curious to know if you can shed light on that. Now I can confirm, folks. The username, the Malibu Company, they are or they were an Imagineer. I'm not sure if you still are, but they were an Imagineer. I can confirm that because I've spoken to the Malibu Company before. The only thing is, I have so much disbelief in these ghost stories on the Queen Mary, just because I know the history of the ship so well. Was a place where come to have fun, a peak experience in their lives. I guess this comes down to, like, do I believe that the Queen Mary is haunted? I think yes, but I think that the ship is not haunted the way people say it is. I don't think that, you know, there's like a story about an old man who broke into somebody's guest room on the Queen Mary and was trying to strangle them in their sleep, and they ended up fighting the guy, and the husband smashed the old man with the standing lamp in the room. And all of that sounded so fake because, for one, there are no standing lamps in the Queen Mary bedrooms. There are none. And second of all, this ghost supposedly visited them 3 times in the night. And I'm thinking, so someone breaks into your room 3 times in the night, and you never once consider that your safety is at risk, that you continue to try to go back to sleep. Like, if someone broke into my room and tried to strangle me, I don't think I'd be able to sleep at all the rest of the night, let alone turn over and be like, oh, whatever, I don't know what that was, but I'm going to go back to sleep. And, and then they went to, by the 3rd time they got attacked, they went to the person at the front desk, so the story goes. And the front desk person says, oh yeah, that's our ghost, that's normal. It's like, I worked in hospitality, I worked in hotels and tourism, and the number one thing you never do is brush off somebody's story of being physically attacked and say, oh, well, that was just a ghost. Whether or not you think it was a ghost, you encourage them to report the story to the authorities, which this person did not do. They just said, oh, that's just our ghost, And so stories like that, I'm just kind of like, that is not a real story, So when people tell me, oh, Queen Mary's haunted, and they tell me these kinds of stories, I go, I don't believe that. Now, when somebody says, I saw a ghost in the corner of my eye, and it looked like they were wearing like 1930s clothing. I'm like, okay, all right, I might believe that. Or when someone says, oh, I got tapped on the shoulder, or someone said something to me in my ear, I'm like, okay, I believe those stories. I just don't believe the stories with these outlandish events in them, you know? Malibu Company says, I heard most of the stories from the Ratherport Properties people, having nothing to do with Disney. Interesting. Malibu Company says, these stories were here long before Disney, as I have said. I spoke with many of the Ratherport Property people who have the incentives. No, yeah, Sequad, there is truth to that, because from what I was told by this other person who worked during that time, there were some stories that the employees of the Ratherport Company had about ghosts on the Queen Mary. And this person told me that what Disney did was they sent out a person. I don't want to give them a title because I don't know what title they had, but let's just say a representative. And this person was in charge of writing down the stories and documenting the stories so that way they could put it in their tours when Disney took over. So I did hear about this. But again, no one specified where Disney got stories such as Jackie, except Malibu Company here is telling me that there was an Asian executive who had heard these stories in the pool of people like Jackie and stuff. Malibu Company says no incentives for the Ratherport people to make anything up. Yeah, I mean, so like I said, I do believe some of the stories, but not all of them. I don't know, because I want to believe you, because I do know that I do know that you are a legitimate person. I do know that for sure. And I do believe you on that part. But the other part of me is just kind of like, these stories, I've researched them, and they're so... One Asian executive I met, and I don't believe anything really scared me. Yeah. Interesting. I'm telling you, this guy turned white when he told me what he saw. Yeah. Well, I mean, I believe that there are things that people saw that made them really scared. You know. I'm curious to know exactly which stories were the ones that people experienced versus the stories that other people didn't experience. There's a on the tour, they talk about, this was a law accounting type guy. Yeah, on the tour, they talked about, they were in the garden lounge, the former garden lounge on A deck. And there was, I think this is a lady in white story, to be honest, I think. But there was a lady that was sitting in the chair, and the two maids were trying to clean the room, get it ready for an event that was going to happen in that room. And, you know, supposedly the lady didn't really move, but when it was time to get her to move, one of the maids asked her, like, oh, please, you know, vacate the room, we have to finish cleaning it. She didn't respond. And what ended up happening was they had to call their manager to ask the lady to leave. When the manager got there, the manager asked the lady, you need to go because they need to finish cleaning this room. The lady then looked at the manager and then disappeared in front of all three of them, just disappeared. And according to the story, one of the cleaning ladies, the one who was originally talking to the woman, she was so scared she quit right then and there. But the interesting thing about that story was the tour guides like to say that story took place in 1989. And I'm like, that's interesting, because 1989 is when Disney took over the Queen Mary. So I'm kind of like, it's interesting that it happened that year, the same year they took over the Queen Mary. So... But, you know, I'm more inclined to believe that story than I am to believe the stories about Jackie, to be honest. Some of the stories about Jackie were so overblown. Maybe what it is, Malibu Company, is there's a shred of truth behind the story, but then over the years, it's been blown out of proportion. Because there are stories that happen like that, that where something really did happen, but it was just blown out of proportion to become this really big thing that is now they're making a movie out of it. So I don't know. Malibu Company says we were told to look for things like light, shadow, etc. I'm told that these were passing images of people in dress of the era, seen in one's peripheral vision, that is all. Yeah, see, those I believe. When people say, like, I could swear I saw somebody wearing something, you know, and they were dressed in this, you know, I believe those stories more. Because that sounds like I've experienced a ghost haunting before. I've experienced a few, and I talked about it in the last live stream extensively. But, so I know, like, what those hauntings usually are. But, yeah, a little exaggerated. But, yeah, like, I was watching a video. It was posted by Tom Linsky. And he talked about that he and his friends, they were kind of hanging out in one of his rooms aboard the Queen Mary. They had booked a room. And they had cut the camera, and then when they came back on, he was explaining to the camera, to the audience. He's like, we had to turn the camera back on to talk to you guys because there was the door to the bathroom was jiggling like someone was trying to open it, and it finally opened on its own, and there was no one behind it, and it scared Tom Linsky and the girl that was with them. I don't know if it was his girlfriend or just a friend, but it scared the girl that they were with, and it's funny because his friend, Matt DeWinkler, he was next to them, and he was like, I don't believe that, and so, but I kind of believe Tom on that story because that sounds like a real haunting. You know, that sounds like a real haunting. So I do believe the ship is haunted. I just don't believe these crazy stories of, like, seeing a woman jump off the deck of the ship or like, there's a famous one where they're like, oh, this man murdered his family on the ship, dismembered all of them, and he was locked in a room afterwards because, they found out he did it, and they locked him in a room until they could get to shore. Like, that was never documented on the Queen Mary. And in fact, when the research was done to figure out where that story came from, there was a real crime done by a man who dismembered his family, but it was in England. And the only connection to the Queen Mary was that the grandmother was sailing aboard the Queen Mary at the time the murder took place. But the murder did not take place on the ship, but it's told in the tours of the Queen Mary that happened on the ship, and it's not true. The grandmother of that family was sailing aboard the ship when it happened, and they say that the crime happened in room B340, but the grandmother, who was the only link to the story at all, was not even in B340. She was in second class. She was all the way at the stern of the ship, so she wasn't even anywhere near that room. So that's why there's, like, some of these stories are just really, like, there's a hint of truth and then it's blown out of proportion. So As nobody says, when I'm going to Queen Mary, I'm bringing holy water. Malibu Company says, I'm an Imagineer trained as a physicist, by the way. Oh, yeah, I believe you. I know. I've had conversations with you before. I know you're an Imagineer. But yeah, I agree. They won't walk up and talk to you. I think it's a residual energy of a place that had good feelings for many thousands. See, that I can believe. Like, it's residual energies, and most of them are happy, you know, like, most of them are happy. And I even talked earlier, a couple minutes ago, about this ghost that tried to strangle this guy in his sleep, and that was just like, I'm like, that's not a real story, you know, like, yeah, Granny Gaming says, not everything is true, kids. That is absolutely, not everything is true. Daniel says, hey guys, not to be rude, but can we stop the ghost stories? You know, actually, I do need to go, because I've been on here for 2.5 hours. I do need to go. But it was interesting to talk to the Malibu Company, because, you know, they are definitely a real source of information for what happened on the Queen Mary. But anyway, don't be afraid to visit the Queen Mary, folks. I've been there many times. It is a wonderful place. And I've never personally seen a ghost on the ship. It's always felt like such a happy and wonderful place to be. So, but I do have to get going, and I might not do a tea time this Sunday because of I might be going somewhere. But if I don't end up going, I'll try to do a tea time this Sunday. Otherwise, when it comes to tea time, it'll be next Wednesday. There is a history video, not really a history video. It's a fun fact video coming out this Friday. And then Saturday, I'll do some kind of fun live stream with you guys. Some kind of fun thing. Malibu Company says, thank you, Alex. Your work is wonderful. We respect you, and you understand us. Oh, thank you so much. I try. Yeah. Granny Gaming says, lately I've noticed you've been live for much longer. I have so much fun talking to people. That's why I have so much fun that I don't want to stop. But I have to stop. Anyway, all right, I'm going to call it quits for tonight. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, C-Quad. Thank you, Daniel. And I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.